Welcome to the Hub of Champions with your host, Shukri Wrights, joined by former NHLer and Boston Bruin Bobby Robbins, the author of his newly released memoir, which I strongly recommend that you go give it a read. Sex, Drugs, Pucks, and Souls. Highly recommended. You could see them. If you're watching it on YouTube, you can already see him, sticking the book in front of the camera for everyone to see. I can't wait to finally get the chance to read it. But so far it seems like it has been an absolute hit, and I know Bruin fans who although the centennial season just ended, but I am sure that hardcore Bruin fans remember you from the 2014-15 season, and as well as like everyone else who has followed along your journey. But Bobby, how are you doing, man? Like how do you feel, like, given that you finally have had the chance to share your story in what has been really an absolutely incredible journey?
Well, first of all, Shukri, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. We've had a
Yeah.
few conversations on the phone, and definitely we're connecting. So I'm excited for these podcasts that we're doing. Just grateful to be here. But yeah, man, it's been a crazy journey here, and it seems like my whole life's always been a crazy journey, and I don't expect that to change. That's what I've always craved and always wanted. I always wanted adventure and just living well and living as large as I could, and with everything that God's given me. And, I'm like, here, this is what I got, this is what I
Yeah.
offer, and just laying it out on the table, and so that's how I try and live my life. And, I did that in my hockey career and just laid it all out there. And, but now I try and shift over from a fighter into a writer and somehow captured that essence, whatever it is, man. I captured it in this book, Sex, Drugs, Pucks, and Souls. And yeah, it's just been crazy to see how people are resonating with it, and to see it just starting. I mean, it's not even really officially out yet, but to see its vines are creeping out there into the world all over
Yeah.
the earth, and it's a big blessing to see. So I'm excited to talk about it, and I sent one to you. It's en
Yeah.
route right now, and
Mhm.
hopefully soon it'll be there, it'll land, and then
Yes.
we'll have another conversation after you experience the Savage memoir.
Which, by the way, for the viewers and listeners of this pod, this is part one of two. There is a part two of this interview, or should I say discussion. Part two is going to be solely about the memoir itself. Part one is just conversation with a man whose journey, I mean, knew no borders, knew no limits. I mean, for goodness sakes, you played in 8 different leagues over the course of your career: the American West Hockey League, the United States Hockey League, the Hockey East. You played in the AHL, the ECHL, the British Elite League, and the American League, and I'm sorry, the Austrian League, and as well as the NHL. I felt like I went through an entire grocery list right there of all the leagues that you've played in. I mean, when you think about your journey, you reflect on where you have been and where you have gone, does it ever like hit you where you just say to yourself, man, I have lived a life of a hockey player that not many men get to say that they have lived?
I mean, it's looking at the hockey DB, man. It's crazy to see. You know, just I picture myself as an 18-year-old, going to junior tryouts and getting cut from
Mm.
5 junior tryouts. Maybe some encouragement to some of your
Wow.
listeners who are hockey players. And I just had that attitude, which I think you have to have if you want to make it. Is just that I'm never going to give up, the nipping, gnawing, and clawing. Like I'm going to give it everything I have. And so just getting cut from tryout after tryout and finally making a junior team out in Montana, in a tier 3 league out in Montana, I was like, this is it. I'm living the dream in Montana. And we ended up winning the championship that year. And that was the last championship I ever won, which is kind of crazy. I just figured I'd win one every year. But that really started it for me. And whenever I talk to young hockey players, I try and give them a little wisdom and everything that I've learned over my career. And what I learned is, no matter where you're at, whatever league you're in, just do those little things every single day, those little steps. What are 5 steps you can do every day that add up over the course of a season? And then you'll improve if you do that every day and stick to it. And then somehow, whether you're the best guy on the team or the worst guy on the team or somewhere in the middle, you make that jump to the next level. And then that happened to me. We won the championship. I made the jump to the USHL. And the same thing. I was one of the worst guys on the team, but just worked my bag off every day and implemented those things and improved little by little, and then got the jump to Division I college. And worst guy on the team, healthy scratch as a freshman. Then after 4 years of giving it, ended up, having a breakthrough senior year, signed an NHL deal with Ottawa, an NHL contract, which was amazing to see. And then
Wow.
really started my pro career. And I mean, I thought it was the end game with signing that contract. I was like, oh, I made it, and then I went to NHL training camp and I saw these guys there and saw how talented hockey players are around the world and in the NHL. And then that really started my career, not making that team in the minor leagues, and it brought me all over the world, like you said. And I mean, we can get more into that, but a big part of that was giving up on my dream and just kind of letting fear and disappointment get to me, and for me just to say, well, forget it. I'm just going to go to Europe and have a good time and play hockey and party and live the life. And so I did that my third and fourth year pro, and then it was finally over there my fourth year pro, where my life just wasn't that feeling. Maybe you haven't felt it, but I've felt it a lot in my life, where I look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, this isn't the life I want to live for myself. I want something else. I want something more for my life. And with all the gifts I have, am I not living up to my potential? And I had that moment after my fourth year pro, and that's when I really committed to fighting my way to the NHL and facing my fear to fight, which I get into quite a bit in my book, is just the nature of fear. And that started my real quest to make it to the NHL. I kind of had two chances. First one I failed because I was a coward. Second one I was dialed in, and that's what finally got me there with these guys, the Boston Bruins.
Yeah. I feel like I can just sit here and just listen,
I
like,
can
forever.
just ramble if you want.
Like I mean, no, like, it's like I'm sitting here just really already absorbing everything that you're sharing, and it's part of the reason why when we so I want to peel the curtain back a little bit, and I know I have this habit where I tend to ramble on myself, where I got so much I want to say. You ever have that feeling where you have so much you want to say, and it's like it all wants to come out at once, but you have to kind of like organize it just a little bit? That was
I know
kind of
that.
me just,
Yeah, I know.
yeah, like that was just kind of me just now, where the thought that what I really wanted to say was that was one of the reasons why when we had this conversation, just to peel the curtain back a little bit in terms of just intimate conversations and moments that we shared prior to recording, before we even agree to do the podcast. I said, I think this is going to be a multi-part episode, because I just feel like there's so much more to you, just Bobby Robbins, the hockey player who had his cup of tea in the NHL, or whatnot. There's something there. There's something to a person's story, especially when, as men, when you are shaped and molded by fire, it creates extraordinary men, and it creates extraordinary character. And when I say character, I don't mean like, oh, like character as in you're like the Hulk mania. No, but character as in like you have this ability to say, you know what, I could say F this, but I'm not going to say F this. I'm going to, maybe have a session or two, pick up my pants, pick up my boots, and just go back at it, go back to work. And that was one of the things that really drew me to your story, is the perseverance, because I am so curious and I'm so amazed through all of the trials and the tribulations that you've gone through, just based on everything that I was able to gather, like prior to reading your book, and everything that I was able to learn about like your career. Through all the trials and tribulations, you just refuse to quit when so many other people have. And I'm sure you had nights, mornings, where you just said, I don't want to do this, but I just can't give up. I just can't give up this thing that I love. Can you speak more on that? On what was that one thing that pushed you on, like, in days and nights where you just wanted to just throw your hands up and say, you know what, I gave everything I could, but there is that little extra push, especially in times when you just may not have necessarily have had it.
Shukri, that's funny you say that. I don't have to think back too far because I had that
Yeah.
moment this morning, literally this morning.
Wow.
And I knew I
Yeah.
had this podcast lined up for this evening, and I woke up and I just had one of those F it days, man. And I was like, I was looking up at this little shelf here in like the corner of my office here, and I'm looking at that book up there, and I was like, I can't do it. I quit, man. I'm just gonna. It's easier to quit, and I was having one of those days, and I struggle with ups and downs with mental health, and I don't, I think it might be related to a lot of shots I took in the head, and I'm trying to manage that in my life. And well, today was one of those days, and I got a as I was in that state, I got a message from a guy, a local guy, a tough guy here in town, and he had just read my book, and he gave me the most encouraging words, and he picked me up, man. He lifted me up, and I think it's cool how bros can do that. And sometimes when you're at a low, somebody will just a rant. I mean, literally never really talked to this guy aside from being Facebook friends, and he just sent me a message, heartfelt message from a big, muscular tattooed guy. He's telling me how he was crying, and I was like, okay, my book does matter. My story does matter. My life does matter, and I'm not going to let the demons or the voices or the lies get to me in my head. So that was today. That was, I guess, 15 hours ago, Shukri. But
Yeah.
looking back on my hockey career, same thing. I mean, after being cut from 5 junior tryouts as an 18-year-old, after being healthy scratched, my freshman year at UMass Lowell Division I hockey, the first 7 games, after getting cut from NHL training camp, after signing this big deal after my senior year, I could have easily, packed it in and gave up. But I think it all goes back to me as a kid. And I think this is something maybe you can relate to as well. But I was a person of color, a brown kid growing up in literally an all white town in northern Wisconsin, an old logging town of
Mm.
3,000 people. My mom's a Filipino Spanish, came here immigrant, came here when she was 20 years old, went to college and met my dad, who's a big Irish German white guy. And so they created me this big this big Filipino guy. And I always felt different. And there I talk about it in my book, but there's a moment when I was a kid, maybe 7 years old, when I was looking at myself in the mirror and I was like, oh man, I feel different from everybody. And then I saw it. I was like, whoa, I am different than people. Like I literally am a different color than people. And and I remember making a commitment at like 7 years old. I was like, I'm gonna make it all the way. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna make it to the NHL. And I think, whether that was healthy or not, I think a part of it was just me trying to find self-worth, and trying to find my identity. Like, who am I in this place where I'm completely different? I looked at it as one of two things. I could have either just given up and, let the world and the town and my circumstance eat me up. Or what I decided to do, I was like, I'm going to go for it, man. I'm just going to go for it and lay it all out there and see what happens. And I always, for some reason, I always trusted in my dreams and had faith that my dreams could become reality. And so that started as a young kid, and that really followed me all through my whole life and even up till now. And man, I've had a lot of failures and a lot of setbacks and times where I did give up, but there was something, I guess, something in my heart and in my mind that always picked me up and kept me believing that I could just keep forging forward on the path toward whatever goal I was striving for, whether it was hockey or whether it was this book or whether it's business or whatever comes next. It's like, the easy thing is to give up. I mean, I wanted to this morning. It's like, I'm done. Like, I can't even do it. What am I doing? And then, somebody sends a message like that. So maybe that's a reminder to me and to your listeners. Like, it's, if somebody's ever on your heart to inject positivity into somebody's life, definitely go with that instinct that you have, because it can make a difference like it did for me today.
Uh, oh man. Um, I'm smiling because there's a part of me that wanted to that 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 wanted to just let the emotions flow, if you will, because I fully understood that. Like,
Yeah.
um, there was Man, like you talked about this one. First and foremost, before I even continue, like, and I mean this genuinely, like, how are you right now? Like, right this moment, how are you? Honestly,
Like as far as mental health, as far
like
as
mental health, everything, mental
yeah, I
health,
mean,
your emotional well being, everything.
yeah, yeah, I mean, man, if I can be honest, like I'm not great, you know. I have my struggles, and I have a family, and I have a wife, and I know we got into it last night, and that probably contributed to my morning of just wanting to give up this morning. And yeah, I mean, we have concerns. We have concerns like, does Bobby have CTE? Like, is he? What's up with these ups and downs and this manic stuff and the depression, and so we do have our concerns, and I struggle, and some days are good days, and today was a good day, and yesterday was not a good day, and um yeah, it's tough to see my family have to deal with it. I have 3 kids, and they just know, they're like, well, just don't talk to dad today. He's in the mood, and um so I have to look back and say, is this just me being an asshole, or is this a rated R? Are we allowed to swear on this podcast? Like, is this me being a jerk? Like, is this who I am, or is this a result of the repeated contact to my head and 130 fights and a million checks? I was the hardest checker ever, and um, so we were in it last night, deep in it. And my wife's like, I don't even know if I can do this. Like, is this just going to keep getting worse and worse? So I have struggles, but the fact that I was able to finish this book and get this out and my story out is a huge accomplishment. I think, I hope, will alleviate some of that stress or darkness that's been hanging over my marriage and my family over the last bunch of years. But yeah, I mean, I've definitely changed from who I was, I think, in a lot of ways, and I've
Mhm.
become hardened and cold and um, antisocial, and like don't want to leave my house. And where I used to be like, the big party Bob, and the source of light in the room, and but uh, I mean, but I'm alive. I have a lot of blessings. I got a lot of blessings to count, and I'm in a fight, man. My word is, I give people a word. I sign it in the book. I say, knuckles up, man. When I do book signings, I'll sign knuckles up. To Shukri, knuckles up, and I'll look that person in the eye and be like, you know what? We're all in a fight. We're all in a fight. This isn't just about hockey fighting. That's a term. Keep your knuckles up, so you don't get hit. It's a defensive posture, but it's also an offensive posture, because you can come with quick punches, right? So, that applies in the fight game and hockey fights, but we're all fighting stuff in our heart. We're all fighting battles and stuff in our head. We're fighting demons. We're fighting addictions. Everyone's fighting something, right? And then we're also fighting for what we believe in, and we're fighting for our goals, and we're fighting to achieve something and to make something in our lives. And so my advice I give myself, and kind of my message that I've been giving people these days, is knuckles up, man. To keep your knuckles up, because you're in a fight, and it's a defensive posture and it's offensive. And either way, you keep your knuckles up, and you can't give up the fight. You can't lose, and you can't let it beat you. And I almost let it beat me. I almost let it defeat me with suicide. After my career ended, and now I'm aware of that. I'm aware that that exists in me, and that's a reality. And I know I have to keep my knuckles up every day and be ready for the fight. So whether it's a good day or a bad day or something in between, I'm keeping my knuckles up, and I'm just being grateful for the day that I have. And I'm thanking God for my family that I have. Like, I can't believe they're still with me. Like, my wife didn't leave me through the dark times. And so now I owe it to her, and I owe it to them to be my best. And so that's kind of the fight where I'm at these days, Shukri, is just battling every day, and trying to be productive, trying to be successful in my art and my writing, and trying not to lose my mind. So thank you for asking, man. I appreciate that. And it's a hard thing to talk about, obviously, especially two dudes, and we're both a couple of tough guys here with bald heads. And but we have emotions too, and hearts, and I think it's good for people to have those conversations, and especially this month being Mental Health Awareness Month. I think it's really important. And as men, especially me, and being a tough guy, we're like, I'm fine. You'll never admit you're hurt. You'll play through anything. And that means physically, not never admit you're hurt, but it also means mentally and emotionally to never admit you're hurt. And man, I admit it, man. I'm hurt in a lot of ways, and I'm trying to be the best version of I that I can be, even through the hurt or the pain or whatever circumstance life throws at me. Is I'm like, all right, I'm going to be grateful for today because I have it today, and even when I'm a big jerk and having one of those bad days, I'm like, all right, joy comes in the morning. That's the line. That's the line around here in my house, man. It's okay. Joy comes in the morning, and so it came today. So just want to keep that momentum going. How are you
Yeah.
doing, man? I want to ask you that too.
um man. Oh man. Oh man.
Keep your knuckles up, Shukri.
Oh,
You know
absolutely.
that, man. Knuckles
I,
up, bro.
absolutely. Man. First and foremost, thank you for sharing that with me. And I'm I'm choked up because um one, I sincerely appreciate you asking, like, how are you? That's one. Um Two, um two, I had a very emotional conversation on Friday with my childhood friend, Q, who we've literally have known each other since we were 7 years old. Literally both grew up in New York. Um, like hung around the same people, adults and so forth. Um, as you were sharing with me, your day to day fight, in terms of you being raw and open with me, and I can't emphasize enough just how powerful that is. Um, because it wasn't until recently that I realized that I I hold a lot. I've been sitting on and holding on to a lot of different things, and it wasn't until I had that conversation with my childhood friend, Q. Just asked the same question you asked me, how are you? And I just and my answer is like every day is literally a fight. Um, a fight, and you talked about how you you fought for your dreams, you fought for everything that you wanted, and even post hockey career, you've been in a battle for your life in more ways than one. And and I don't know if I don't know, maybe strength is a good word to use in this case, but I think describing you as one strong son of a bitch is probably probably the best adjective that I could use in this moment in time. Like personally, I have my good days. I definitely had better days the last few days. Um, but it's definitely been a fight these last 8.5 months, um, where not a lot of people know that my anxiety attacks returned, um, like starting late last summer, which directly coincided with my decision to leave Boston at that time, because I just had so many questions about direction of where's my life going, like my career. I had so many questions. And leaving Boston at that time and leaving everything that I had built in that city to come to Philadelphia um was it and I look at it, and I don't say this with a whole lot of it's sorrow. I don't want people to feel sorry for me, but rather I look at it, and I realize just how much time I really needed throughout this journey, these last 8 months, because it has not been easy. And Friday, I think everything came to the surface emotionally. You talked about mental health, Bobby. I personally I'm like a very big, strong believer in us men having those candid conversations more, because um every day uh it's a battle for a lot of people. And you share with me your battle like every single day. You talked about how joy returns in the morning, and I think that's such a beautiful saying. Joy returns in the morning. And there are days that, and you talk about how today you were just like, fuck it, I just want to give up today. I've had plenty of days like that, plenty of days like that, whether if it was here or even when I was in Boston or even when I was in New York. Um, I I felt that. I felt that. Um, I felt that to the core. And for me, I think the biggest thing that I'm fighting through right now is just the like is I guess learning to just handle the uncertainty of where things are heading. Um, and just not knowing like what's next, and just learning to let go of that stress, because when I tell you that this shit has been like it's just been bottled up in my mind and in my heart for quite some time. I felt that, and I'm talking about just in terms of the like scheme of life, because you as an accomplished man, Bobby, you could fully relate to this, probably better than I can. When you are fighting, whether if it's demons or fighting to accomplish certain goals in your life or certain benchmarks that you want to hit, you're always constantly thinking what's next. You're thinking about what's the next thing that I can do, what's the next. You're always in a constant state of go 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 and go. And I didn't know how to relax. I didn't know how to like step back from everything and just hit pause mentally. And like for me, towards the end of my time in Boston, and I think even just these 8 months alone here in Philadelphia, just these 8 months alone, particularly, it's taught me a lot. And I will tell you that it's a battle every day, but it's also a reason to be to have gratitude as well, just to even live to see another day. Um and I just really do appreciate you asking, because I think more than anything, like right now, all I can do is just approach it moment by moment by moment, because I've had days just like you where I'm just like, you know what, like, is this really even worth it? Like, if is this worth it? But I just kept telling myself, shoot, if you give up now, you will never know what that other side of darkness is going to be like when everything finally opens up.
Right, and you can't have regret. That's the one thing I've decided, and this, we're both chasing goals here, and
Yeah.
the easy thing to do is to give up. Like,
Mhm.
everyone gives up. I look around the people I knew who had big dreams, and it seems like everyone gave up. And I'm just looking around. I'm like, man, am I the last man standing? I'm like, I can't give up. I can't do it. Even if the enemy is saying in my ear, you got to give up. What are you doing? those are just lies that are being whispered in our ears. And man, that's when you got to keep your knuckles up. You got to be like,
Yeah.
okay, you can say lies in my ear, but I'm going to keep my knuckles up and I'm going to stay in this fight and live to fight another day. And like you said, joy comes in the morning, and then you got through yesterday, and now you get through today. Maybe you take a step in the right direction, maybe you take a step back, maybe you stay right where you are, but you had today. So then you learn from whatever happened. Did you move forward, backward, or stagnant? Okay, I'm going to learn from it, and tomorrow I'm going to take those lessons I learned and try and be better tomorrow. And then you just keep stacking them on. And that's what I found. And even as I'm saying this, it's like I'm preaching to myself. I'm like, oh yeah, I got to do that. I got to be better at that, because it is hard and it is a fight. And from what I've found in my life is I've always had big dreams that I was chasing down, and the voice of doom, I call it, the voices of doom, those doubtful voices and those lies are
Oh
always
yeah.
there. They're always
Mhm.
there. And so I think if you can find a way to take those voices of doom and turn them into motivation and be like, you know what? F you, man. I used to do that with
Mhm.
coaches who didn't believe in me. I was a psychopath, man. I remember being like 20 years old and before college, and I'm doing bench press. And I'm like, I got to do 6, a heavy set of 6. I'm repping it out on 4. And I'm literally picturing in my mind a coach's face on that fat bar in front of me.
Mm.
And I'm picturing him just looking down at me and I'm pushing him up. Is that healthy? I don't know. I don't know if that's healthy, but that's what I did, and I think it can
Yeah.
apply today too. And whatever lies are being told to you, or those voices of doom or doubt or the enemy, just be like, you know what, f you, and just go for it, and put your knuckles up and do what you got to do, and try and move forward, and then try and move forward tomorrow, and repeat. That slow grind, that's a hockey career too. That was my career, just a slow grind. And I think that's the recipe for success.
You talk about staying in that fight, and your career has been full of fights, no pun intended. But I want to dive a little deeper, because for once a fighter, always a fighter, and it takes a very special kind of warrior to embody that spirit of saying, you know what, I'm going to stand up for my fellow man, whether he was in the right or wrong, especially on the ice. Like, what goes into making that decision when you're on the ice, and how does that impact or affect the camaraderie amongst yourself and as well as your teammates as well?
I mean, it's the most intense thing in all sports. The
Yeah.
fact that you can take off your gloves and fight, and the fact that there are certain players that's part of their job description. It's the most intense thing in all of sports, and I think it's the most powerful and profound thing in all of sports. I mean, you saw it with the Bruins when Pasta fought.
I was
You
going to
saw.
ask you about
Yeah,
that.
well,
You
I'm
stole
sure we'll
my
get into
thunder.
that. We'll
Yeah, yeah,
we'll, we'll put that on the shelf for a second. But you saw
yeah,
it when Big Rig Pat Maroon came to the team.
yeah.
Anytime you, as a hockey team, I experienced it. I guess I'll answer it this way. I
Sure.
experienced it. And I talk about it pretty deeply in my book when I played for the Belfast Giants.
Mm,
I had escaped. I played 2 years here in North America, one in the American League, one in the East Coast Hockey League, with a few call ups, and I never stuck. And there was always a pressure for me to fight. And Shukri, I was the biggest puss in the league. At least I felt that way, or
wow.
that's how I saw myself, as a
Mm,
pussy.
mm,
I was so scared to fight, man. And I realized that I look when I had to every man has to look at themselves in the mirror. And I looked at myself in the mirror, and one, I was a drug addict, and two, I was a coward. I was like, I'm a coward. And I'm like, okay, I think I'm just a drug addict to cover up the fact that I'm a coward.
mm.
And so that's one of the reasons I left North America and just gave up on my NHL dream. I know I signed a big ticket with Ottawa, had a failed 1-year contract, and then played one more year in the minors, and then jumped ship. went over to Belfast, which was awesome. I love amazing organization, great people over there, and had the time of my life there. But the reality was that I was kind of hiding over there, going across the pond to Europe where there's no fighting. And there is fighting in that league, in the UK league. But when I went over there, I said, I'm just going to be a player. I was a pretty good player too, but I could also fight. So I just went over there and I said, I'm just going to play as hard as I can and have fun and party and play hockey and just live the life. And I'm never fighting again. And so I went over there, and there's some tough guys in that league, and things got a little rowdy one game. I talk about it in my book, when have another one of those looking in the mirror moments, when there was a big line brawl on the ice against the Newcastle Vipers, and it was right in front of our bench, a big scrum, like 5-on-5. Two guys went out and kind of separated from the scrum and dropped the mitts and fought in the near the blue line. And then one of the guys on Newcastle was trying to pull me out of the scrum, and he's yelling. He's like, "Let's go, Robbins. Let's go, you fucking pussy. Let's go." And and it literally in front of all my teammates, and I just I heard him, I knew what I was supposed to do. I'd been in, probably 30 fights up until this point. So I knew the code. And man, somebody's calling you out like that in a scrum. You drop your gloves and you fight that guy in front of your bench, no matter what. But I didn't. I just stayed in the scrum and like pushed around. And that just ate at my soul, man. It ate at my soul because I saw that I was such a coward. And then shortly after that, because Newcastle had a big reputation in the league, they literally had like 5 tough guys on their team, like pure meatheads, and they were just pushing guys around. And so we brought in a legitimate heavyweight, big lefty, Jason the Killer Rushton. And so I hadn't heard of this guy, but he's played in the Quebec League. And he came in and, with a shaved mohawk, giant muscles, and was just chucking them with all the heavies in the league. And I remember watching this guy, and I always had an enforcer on my team whenever I played. There was always a heavyweight, but I never really paid any attention to it. I was like, oh yeah, they fight. That's cool. I just want to play hockey. But it was in Belfast when I saw how much a tough guy on a team can affect a team, because he came in and we played so much bigger every night. And I saw him out there fighting the other team's heavyweight and chirping from the bench. I was like, I didn't know it. I was watching him in awe, but I was kind of taking notes too. I was like, oh, wow, man. Okay. And so that's where it kind of developed over there, where I really saw the true power of the enforcer role of that tough guy. And then, not to drag the story on, but I played the next year in the Austrian league and barely played. It looked like my career was going to be over. I didn't put up any points. And I finally decided, a bunch of stuff happened in my life where I, pretty much everything fell apart for me. I didn't have a contract, went through a lot of personal things and sorting through my demons that I had. And that's when I made the commitment. I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to fight my way to the NHL. And a big part of it was watching this guy, Jason Rushton, do what he did and play that role. And so I came to North America, and I took on that role and really faced my fear and honed it over the next couple of years and learned how to do it, when the right time to fight was. And by the time I got to the Bruins organization, I was pretty legit. I was the real deal. Like, I knew it's something with instinct, Shukri, where like something would happen. I could literally feel it inside of me. I'm like, now is the time to fight. And that's the guy I got to fight. And looking back on it, is I always knew that. I always had that in me, because I fought in junior and I played that role. But so I always knew it, and I had that in me, but it was just getting over that fear hurdle. And so now I'm trying to take that lesson into all aspects of my life, not just hockey fighting. Is like, all right, what fear is holding me back? Because I don't want to let fear hold me back anymore. But yeah, it's such a huge and important role for a team, because it gives everybody that sense of safety and space. And man, I experienced it as a player. And so when I was doing that role with the Bruins, with Providence and Boston, I knew what an asset it was to an organization. And I knew the skill guys just felt so much just comfort knowing that I was out there. I'll tell you a story just popped in my mind during the lockout.
Absolutely.
Torrey Krug, you've heard of that guy, right?
Oh yeah.
Legendary defenseman, unreal guy, a great guy. He was on the Providence Bruins with me, and we were playing against I forget who it was, the Devils farm team, I think. and Cam Jansen was out there,
Oh
and I
wow.
had and Cam Jansen's tough, man. We used to watch
Yeah,
him.
it's one of the tough guys.
Oh
Yeah.
man, I was scared to death of Cam Jansen. But at that point in my career, I was like, all right, I feel okay to fight a guy like that. I was like, if he asked me to fight, I'll fight him. If I got to fight him, I'll
Mhm.
fight him. And but I was also scared of him. Let's be honest. Like he's an animal, and he just had a huge NHL career. He was on his way, out in the American League, and he absolutely roasted Torrey Krug behind the net, just smoked him with a dirty hit up high. And I was right there, and I just threw off my gloves right away and dropped my bucket and squared up. And Cam didn't take the bait. He just skated away. You know, Cam's probably thinking, why would I fight this guy right now at the end of my shift? I just hit this guy. Like, he probably didn't want me to get the jump on him. But for whatever reason, he just didn't fight me. And we came back in the locker room, and you should have heard our team, because everybody was scared of Cam Jansen, and we came in the locker room, and our team was like, yeah, he was so scared of you. And I was like, yeah, man, but inside I'm like, oh, thank God I didn't have to fight him, uh, and then, part of the code is later in the third period, the game was pretty much over. I think it was like 5-2. We were winning.
Mhm.
And he asked me at the faceoff, he's like, all right, man, you ready to go now? And I turned him down. I was like, nah, you had your chance already, and just swore at him and chirped him. But inside it was more probably just fear, not wanting to fight him. But the fact that happened, literally the next practice, Bruce Cassidy would have
Yeah.
video every day. And so on the video, that was one of the clips, was that hit, me coming in, dropping my gloves, and Cam skating away. And just Torrey Krug and the team guys on the team seeing that does something, that's important. That role does something. It gives you courage, and it gives skill guys that room. So I'll never forget when he did, like, the fact that it happened and everybody was hooting and hollering was cool. And then the fact that, literally the next day, coach puts that on the teaching tape. I think because there was a lesson to be learned there. Then I think the lesson was, this is the real deal. Like, hockey's no joke. Guys are trying to kill you out there, and we have a guy on our team who's willing to die for this team, and who's willing to kill the other guy for you. As Torrey Krug, he's willing to do it for you, and you and you. It's a powerful thing, and that
Wow.
doesn't exist in sports, man. And it's the most profound thing ever. So I don't know. I'm rambling. Don't get me started on hockey fights, but
Like
it's an amazing
it's
thing.
it's too late because I mean I've already opened Pandora's box there,
Yeah.
and it directly ties into what I want to talk about with you next, because there was a lot of talk throughout the entire hockey world when the Bruins and Panthers faced off, um down in Florida, in which that Pasternak and Matthew Kachuk went at it. The game was already decided. It was part of a 6-1 loss for the Bruins in that game. But Pasternak and Kachuk fighting, and Pasternak was not a fighter at all. If we're keeping it all the way 100, he drops the gloves with Matthew Kachuk, and I I went on Twitter saying that his fight certainly, I'm sure, had to have only increased the amount of respect that he already had in that Bruins locker room, but it's only gone up even more. And I just listened to you share like about the importance of what fighting for your teammates to them and to the locker room. Bobby, you were part of the Bruins organization. You understand the culture better than I better than I ever can, and so forth. How much did that fight inspire his fellow teammates, and what did that moment do to a locker room like the Bruins, where there's already such an established culture that has been there for such a while?
I mean, I think it lights a fire under the guys. I don't. Did they win the next game? I don't remember.
They lost the series in game 6.
Okay. Well, it was all the talk in the media, and
Yeah.
and it lights a fire under guys. For for the best player on your team, arguably,
Mhm.
and a guy who really doesn't play with a lot of passion. I mean, he has his passion in his own way, but he's so skilled. It almost seems like he's calm out there. I hated those guys where it just seemed so easy for him, and I was working
Mm.
as hard as I could, but I mean, that's his skill level. I mean, that guy should never fight. He should just score goals, and make plays and score goals. And the fact that he was fighting Kachuk, who's a tough guy, he's no slouch himself. He knows
Yeah.
how to throw him, and he's been in a bunch of fights. That and the fact that he ate one there and his helmet went flying and he blacked out. He went crazy and he was going nuts, and showing an outburst like that of passion is a powerful thing for anybody. That gets the boys fired up for sure. But the fact that it's your best player doing that, man, every guy in that locker room is going to take a look at themselves and be like, all right, that guy did that. I need to step up my game, and this is what we need. And for sure that was 100% respect from the coach. You saw it when he gave the nod on the bench. He's like, all right, he didn't tell him not to, because he knows, this is hockey. This is no joke out there. It's the real deal. And for him to do that was awesome. That made my day to see.
Absolutely. I want to go back to when you played for the Providence Bruins, because Bruin fans, especially those that follow the AHL team, the Providence Bruins, will always look at you as one of the most popular Providence Bruin players to have ever played for that team. You played for Bruce Cassidy when he was with the Providence Bruins, when he was the head coach there. Tell us about the makeup of Cassidy as a head coach when he was with the Providence Bruins, which we all obviously know he ended up becoming the Bruins head coach at just shortly after not Cassidy, Claude Julien was fired, and went on to win the cup a year ago with the Vegas Golden Knights. But walk us through the early days of when Bruce Cassidy was the head coach of the Providence Bruins, and did you see then that he was ultimately going to become a successful NHL coach? And what were some of your recollections and memories of having played for him?
Yeah, he was awesome, man. He's my favorite coach I ever played for. Um, I got to play with him, play under him for 4 seasons or 3.5 seasons.
Mm,
And you know, I don't know if you've experienced this in your life, but when you meet people, maybe you have a coach or you just meet people, a teacher or somebody, and you know that they believe in you. That's a
mm.
pretty good feeling, right? Where
Yes,
you
it
just
is.
you just know it. You're like, he'll tell you, I believe in you, and then you just know it by his actions, where he puts you out on the ice in different situations. And he was just one of those coaches who I clicked with right away. Um, there's a there's a funny scene in the book where I get called up. I'm already 30 years old, and I get called up to the team, and he basically says, Bobby, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. Just go play good hockey. You know why? You know what your job is. You know what to do, and just play good hockey and be accountable. He was so fair to me that if I did that, and we talked a lot too, and he would say, Bobby, he's like, you're a good hockey player. Your hockey ability is going to get you to the NHL. And he goes, I'll let you take care of all the fighting stuff. He's like, I obviously know. He's like, that's what you do. That's a part of your game. He's like, you handle all that. So those days of like the coach tapping you on the shoulder and having to say something to you, I don't know if it still exists. I think guys
Mm,
now, from my own experience, guys who are in that position, who were like me, who were fighters, when it's your time. Like if coach sends you out there, you just know. You're like, now's the time. I got to ask this guy to fight. And so he just let me handle that part. Some days, my wires would cross and I'd lose it and do something stupid. And I
mm.
guess a couple funny stories is one time there's a video online. It's called Bobby Robbins loses his marbles. It's Bobby Robbins loses his marbles. It's a classic. It's actually it coincides. We'll do a little plug for the book here.
Oh
This
yeah.
this picture here, that was my wonderful broken nose here.
Yeah, he's got a little for those that are listening on audio
Oh
only, he's
yeah.
got a little roll up of, I don't know if it's tissue or cotton up his left nostril. Typical hockey face, eh?
Yeah, I hit a guy. We were playing against Wilkes-Barre, and I hit a guy so hard. I was just flying, and the impact made his body like jerk backward. His helmet flew backward right as my visor was flying
Yeah.
up, and his helmet smashed me in the nose and just exploded. My nose broke it everywhere, and
Oh,
I had to wear a mask for a couple weeks, and so it was either that. I think it was the next game we played against Wilkes-Barre again. I had a mask on, and whenever I would get hurt, I mean, I'm a little crazy, to be honest with you. I'm a little nuts out there, especially on the hockey rink.
yeah.
They called me Blackout Bobby. I would black out and do things on the ice and come back and be like, oh man, what happened? And then there's three guys laying there on the ice, and
Mm,
and something crazy or violent or amazing happens out there. And I'm just like, oh, I blacked out. Well, this was one of those moments where I was, anytime I got hurt, I would take my game would elevate to the next level.
yeah.
And I got my nose broken, had the cage on, and I'm just flying around trying to fight guys like like a caged animal. No pun
Mm,
intended with that cage on. And Bobby Robbins loses marbles. I end up, just destroying this guy, Samuelson, and big brawl breaks out. I try and rip my helmet, my mask off to fight this guy.
wow.
It's a big gong show, and I get kicked out of the game. I get suspended, and Bruce Cassidy's like, Bobby, he's like, all right. He goes, maybe one of those a season's okay. Just it keeps guys honest. It
Mm,
he's like, it's a good thing for people to know your wires can cross. He's like, but that was your one. He's like, don't do that
wow.
again. I was like, yes, sir. And so I always remember that. I was like, oh, one incident a season, is probably not a bad thing if you're a tough guy. And it keeps people on their toes. Like, is this guy gonna spear me in the ear hole? Like, is this guy's
Ooh.
nuts? It keeps keeps people on their toes. Um, but yeah, I'll never. He always just gave little pieces of advice like that to me, and he would, another one that really stuck out to me was he said, Bobby, you don't have to bring your A game every game. He goes, but you better bring your B game. I was like, okay.
Mm,
So I thought about that. I was like, okay, what does that even mean? It's like,
mm,
you can't bring your A game every game, which is true. I mean, can you bring your A game every single night? He goes, no, but if you show up, you better bring your B game, which is still good. So he
mm,
was he was always on me about consistency and just bringing it and being a dependable player. And yeah, I loved him, and to see him go up to the NHL was awesome. And then, man, I was rooting for him. I don't actually watch a lot of hockey, and for whatever reason, I don't really watch a lot. I probably haven't watched one game this year, to be honest with you.
wow.
And I've seen some highlights and stuff on YouTube, but I haven't literally have not watched a game. But I'll go to my dad's house and watch the finals. The Stanley Cup with them, and I was watching same thing. I didn't watch hardly any hockey, and then I watched Cassidy win the cup, and I got really emotional. I started crying, and
Wow.
started crying. And I sent him an email that night. I was like, man, I'm so happy for you, and told him, I was like, I was crying watching you, and I just told him how proud I was. And man, the guy just won the Stanley Cup, and he emailed me back, and I'm like, that's
Wow.
just the kind of guy he is. And then one more story about Cassidy is
Sure, absolutely.
my first year of my NHL contract, the year after the lockout. I don't even know what year that was, 2012, 13, maybe.
So that was the year to get the lockout, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was the next year I signed a 2-year deal with Boston,
Yeah,
and on my
2013,
first
14.
my yeah, so my first year I was going to make the team. Um, I guess everyone says that, but that was the word on the street. Robbins isn't coming back, and I ended up blowing out my knee. So I tore a MCL ligament my knee. Man, I guess still hard even to say it still, because that was a big moment in my career, a huge adversity I had to get over.
Mm,
I was going to be up there and things were looking good. I fought a guy, I'm chirping Ovechkin and we score a goal. And then Tom Wilson, on my second to last shift, I make a sweet play, like outstretched under the triangle to my centerman who's streaking through. And I take a stride, and Tom Wilson, 220 pounds, he trips and falls right on my knee and blows out my knee. And so I missed 8 weeks. And that was a tough one. And then I think it was when I came back, I'd had a meeting with Coach Cassidy, and he told me they hadn't named a captain, and he had said, he's like, I was an assistant captain in Providence. I was one of the leaders on the team, and
Mm,
um, we had brought in a guy, Mike Moore, who's he played in the NHL with San Jose, great leader, real tough, dependable defenseman, and he'd been a
mm,
captain. And so I don't. There was kind of a talk like, is Bobby going to be the captain? And Bruce called me in. He's like, hey, he's like, I think you could be a captain on this team. He goes, but Bobby, he goes, this isn't where you want to be. He goes, I think you need to keep your focus on the NHL. He goes, because I believe you can play there. And Boston signed you for a reason. Like, they didn't just do it to be nice. Like, they know you can be an asset there. And he's like, we want to give you the A. He goes, but we want you to keep your focus on doing what you're doing, but keep in Boston as your goal, not being the captain
absolutely.
here. And just to hear that, I was like, wow, this guy really believes in me, and I believed in myself at that point too, but it took it to the next level. And so that's just who he was to me, and I think to a lot of guys. He was an encourager and a really great coach, and yeah, he's my favorite coach in the NHL, so I'm always rooting for him.
That's really amazing, and I'm I'm curious to hear your stories and your recollection of you finally get called up to play for the Boston Bruins, and at that time, Zdeno Chara is still the captain. He's still around, like towards the end of his prime career. Patrice Bergeron, he's become like one of the leaders on that team, and like those core guys are still there, like Krejci, Rask, and so forth. What do you remember most about when you got the call to play for the Boston Bruins, and as well as your first time interacting with Chara, Bergeron, and some of the leaders on that team as well?
Yeah, I mean, those guys they were all just amazing guys. And I had a moment where, we watch these guys on TV and we see them as almost like these like superhumans and athletes, and we
Yeah.
put them on a pedestal and almost like idolatry. We're like, these guys
Mm.
are like gods, man. And but it was it was during the lockout, when the lockout ended, and we played against the Boston Bruins. I don't know if you knew this, but the Providence Bruins played against the Boston Bruins the week the lockout ended.
Mm.
Did you know that? Were you at
I
that
didn't know
game?
that. No, no, I wasn't at the
Yeah.
game. No. Wow.
So there's a hilarious scene in the book because we went out and we partied really hard after a 3-3, and my buddy came down. We took it to the edge, and then we get a text on Monday morning that says, "Hey, we're playing the Boston Bruins tomorrow at the Garden. Pregame skates at 10 in the
Wow.
morning." And imagine waking up to a hungover text message and reading that, and I'm like, "Whoa, the lockout ended." And so that was the reality. And literally, I guzzled a gallon of water, started pumping superfoods. I'm like, "All right, I'm fighting Thornton at center ice with my buckets off, and we're doing this, man. It's the real deal." And Sean Thornton's is as tough as they come. And I was scared, but I was like, I can do this. I've come this far. This is my destiny. And so we, yeah, we go up, we bus up there, and we played against the Boston Bruins, and we beat them. We beat them, I think,
Wow.
6-2. And I
Wow.
remember having a moment on the bench where I was watching Krejci and all these guys skate by, and Chara, and I was like, these guys are just mere mortals, man. I mean, I obviously respected them and saw how skilled they were, but like,
Yeah.
the lockout just ended and they were making mistakes and pucks were blowing up on their stick, and I was like, whoa, these guys are just mere mortals like me. I can play out here. And I ended up fighting Adam McQuaid that game. It's a funny
Oh,
story.
wow.
Yeah, Claude Julien. Claude Julien came in the locker room and told us, he's like, hey, this was Tuesday and they had their first game Friday. He's like, this is a tune-up game for us. This is important. This is a real game. It was sold out in like 5 minutes. The Garden sold out. They gave away
Yeah.
tickets for free on whatever website they're on, and in 5 minutes it sold out. And he's like, this is a real game. Play it real. But he goes, no fighting out there. And he kind of looked over at me. He's like, no fighting. And so there is a part of me that was like, oh, there was a relief that I didn't have to fight Thornton, because I hate fighting lefties, and I know Thornton, he switches it up, and I think he is a natural lefty. And I was,
Mm.
it was a huge anxiety. Anytime I was going to fight a tough guy, it was massive anxiety. But at that point in my life, I was just like, I'm going to deal with it. I accept it. This is my destiny. I'm doing it. But after that, I was like, oh, I'm just going to play hockey, man. I'm just going to fly out here and crush guys. And so we were just playing good hockey, and then it ended up blowing up in the third period, and I went toe to toe with Adam McQuaid and ended up sneaking in a punch and dropped him. And um, the rest was history. And that's when I signed the NHL deal shortly after that. But yeah, that was a big moment when I saw them. I was like, these are just men, man, and I'm a man too, and I am going to do this. And so that was a big boost in my confidence. And then coming into I just showed up to captain's practices that summer. Like we called Don Sweeney up and we're like, hey, can I go to these captain's practices? He's like, yeah, of course. So I just showed up and acted the part like I belonged there. And guys really took me under their wing, especially Chara, and really took time to talk to me. And I think they would have done that to anybody, and I did witness it. They did that to everybody. There was very little ego on that team. And I think you find that all in hockey. I mean, there might be a few guys here and there throughout the league, but there's no ego in a game where you have a spear in your hand and 10 knuckles in your gloves that can drop at any moment. So I saw that there, just humility, especially with the leaders of Patrice and Chara. And but yeah, they took everyone under their wing, but especially me as a fighter. I think that role is just embraced because they know like this guy's willing to drop his gloves and go fight out there to the death for this team and for me, And so they treated me amazing and just were really encouraging. And Chara was a great captain and he was always really, really encouraging to me and said some things that I'll never forget, which were super encouraging. And but yeah, those guys were kind of the old guard, and there's a new guard in the NHL now, but I was lucky to play under those guys and to see what that leadership looks like. And I remember all the kind of the young guys. I was already 31 or 32 at that point, but I was bunched into I have like the young Filipino skin face, and I was real lean and I looked like a young guy, but I was already 30. And so I was kind of grouped in with all these young guys. I hadn't been in the NHL yet. And we were all kind of the day before testing opened up, we were all like, oh, there's a 300-yard shuttle test, which is the big test. It was a big mental hurdle for me because I was a big guy, 220 pounds. So I always struggled with the running tests. And I think it was a mental block for me as well. But we were like, oh man, do we practice these? And everybody, all these young guys were freaking out about this 300-yard shuttle. And I remember Marchand walks in, he comes in, he has a presence about him. And his warm up was just going and doing the 300-yard shuttle test. He just banged it out and like jumped over to the weight bench. And we're looking at this guy. And that was another moment where I was like, whoa, like if I want to do this, if I'm going to make this a reality, I need to be a super athlete. I need to take it from a level 10 to an 11, and I did that and through good coaching and good training. And but to see these guys, man, it's a cool thing to see people performing at the highest level in the world. And then for me to be there too, I always almost saw myself as an outsider, as for whatever reason, it might've been self-confidence or like, I always saw myself as an artist, just happened to play hockey. But I was just witnessing it all and I was just taking it all in and just being grateful to be there. And yeah, it was awesome to get to know those guys and just to learn from them every day.
You talked about captain's practice and like having played the scrimmage against the Boston Bruins when you were with the Providence Bruins at the end of the lockout in 2013. And I'm curious, like, did you get to experience like the testing in which that you saw Chara do like any of the pull-ups, those legendary those legendary like I wouldn't say antics, but because it was just unbelievable watching on behind the B do all those pull-ups in a row and just have all of his teammates just stand there and all. Did you get to experience that?
I did, man. It was crazy
What
to
was that
see.
like? Please tell me.
It was crazy. I mean, the guy's obviously a monster. Like his arms are
Yeah.
like as tall as me. His arms are huge. Like 6 foot tall
I got to meet him
arms.
twice in person. I know, like it's just there's no words. It really isn't.
Right. I mean, it's something to behold, man. And during testing, that was the thing. You know, all the camera crew was there. It was all right. Chara's up. So literally 50 guys who were at training camp all gathered around in a big crowd and watched Chara do the pull up test and bang out 30 pull ups or whatever he does, 33 pull ups,
Mhm.
and that to know that that's your leader on your team,
Yeah.
one who'll do anything for the team, who's an amazing leader and amazing hockey player, but three who can literally crush your skull if he needs to. That's a powerful leader. That's I like that. I like leaders who have power, but also the mind and a gentleness. And I think he really had all that. And then just to see him leading the way, banging out 33 pull-ups. Oh, and the pull-up bar was like, you had to jump up there and grab it. It was at a normal pull-up bar height, but he was so long, his knees were like almost touching the ground. So he's hanging there. When he comes down, he had to have his knees at like a 90-degree angle. So
Whoa.
so he didn't touch the ground. It was crazy. I would love to see some footage of that. But yeah, that
Like
was that was inspiring.
there I know Behind the Beat has footage like somewhere on YouTube from like the first season that they started doing episodes that was during the 2013-14 season. That was the first year they started doing episodes on this. And
Okay.
um but like I remember like the first time, cuz so fun fact, I used to work at TD Garden when I was in Boston as part of the bowl gang, the legendary bowl gang.
Okay.
And what would happen is that there was a section, and it's not there anymore, I'm certain of this, but there was a section where it was literally right before you hit the Bruins locker room, where it's like a little pathway underneath one of the sections that would be removed for, or whether it was Bruins hockey or it would be turned into a Celtics tunnel when it would be time for Celtics basketball. And there would be these two pull-up bars, one higher than the other. And I just remember seeing it one day, the very first time in person. It was September of 2017. And I remember distinctly thinking, these got to be the pull-up bars that Char does that you've been seeing on Behind the Beat. And every time I would walk by it, I remember I actually tried this one time, and I just hung my arms on the pull-up bar trying to pull myself up. I'm like, yo, okay, I see why people like marvel at just being able to just like at Char just being able to do it, because it's like I don't think I'm I don't think a natural human being is supposed to be able to have this amount of brute like the normal strength. But man, like yeah, like but seeing those pull up bars, like which I'm sure it's not there anymore due to the renovations and stuff that took place at TD Garden. Um,
I know the spot
but
you're talking about.
yeah, that it
Yeah.
was
That's the spot.
if you were yeah, if you were a player, you always walk by this section where it was curtained up, and you walk straight down, and there was like this, I wouldn't say barricade, but it was like a makeshift wall, so to speak. And then you look to your right, past you walk we park walk past two rooms on your right, and then there's like a little hallway that will veer off to the right, and there's two
Yeah.
pull-up bars there.
Yeah.
Like yeah, it's it's just funny to smile and thinking about it, because it's like, okay, I can literally write a book about behind the scenes things I got to experience working as part of the ball gang that most fans never get the chance to actually see, which is really cool. But it's really awesome to hear your story about like training camp and just going through that process with the Boston Bruins. And I have one more question before I wrap up part one officially of this pod with you, Bobby, and that is, when you think about the centennial anniversary of the Boston Bruins, which just completed since 100 years of Boston Bruins hockey, and the fact that you had a small part in that, played a small part in that, how much pride does that give you, knowing that your name is forever etched as part of 100 years of Bruins hockey? Like, that's got to be an unbelievable like feeling and thought, because 100 years, original six franchise, when we all know how steep the history is for of the original six teams, but especially the Boston Bruins at that first US based NHL team. What does that mean to you, Bobby?
It's amazing, and the fact that I had a cup of coffee in the NHL. Like, I'm just a blip. I'm so glad I
Yeah.
got to capture the whole story behind it in this book, and I truly believe that's what my destiny was, and that's why my life and career ended up the way it did. But to play 3 games for the Boston Bruins, obviously there is a big part of me that is like, oh, that's amazing. I'm super blessed, but I wouldn't be genuine, Shukri, if I didn't tell you that there is, and I think there always will be a part of me that's disappointed. Like, I feel like a failure, like I had a failed career. Like, why didn't I play 300 games? You know, why did I? And I know a lot of reasons why. I just had to work out a lot of issues I had within myself. But the reality is I got to play those 3 games, got a cup of coffee in the NHL with the Boston Bruins and an original six team, and for me it means everything. It's an amazing thing. I'm so glad that it happened. But now that the centennial happened, to have experienced what the Bruins have done for the players and for me personally, which is like sending me they sent me this package. It's up here on the shelf. It's tucked back there
Wow.
behind these
Mm.
Providence Bruins beer cans from Union Brewery in Providence. But they
Wow.
sent me this thing like with a coin, a centennial coin, like a big plaque picture of me in the Bruins uniform, a thank you
Wow.
letter, thanking me for being a Boston Bruin. And then, every couple of months I get a letter in the mail. It's like, oh, Boston Bruins. I'm living in the middle of nowhere, in Wisconsin. And I'm like, oh, I got a letter from the Bruins. And my wife hands me, and it's like, hey, come, we're having an event. You're invited to an event, and
Mm.
um, I got invited to, with the Bruins alumni hockey team. And the fact that they would do that to me, who just played 3 games, it makes me feel very special, and it just shows the class of that organization. And
Yeah.
I played 170 games or whatever for the Providence Bruins. That's where I really made my mark, was in that
Yeah.
organization. And there is a close tie, obviously, between the NHL and the AHL teams there. And but I was a Providence Bruin. Like, I was the Providence. I made it to the Providence Bruins all-time team. I got inducted into that, and
Wow.
it seemed like that with Boston, it just got cut off short with my injury, and so there's always been the kind of a bitter taste, and it's been a hard thing to swallow, even a decade later. Um, but to see the Bruins just welcome me in every way. I went out a couple weeks ago to a Providence Bruins, like their last weekend there. I was there talking about my book. There was fan appreciation weekend, and went out there as my first time back in a decade. And so I'm down there doing a signing, for a lot of the fans. It was cool to see people who I saw 10 years ago. And as I'm down there, I look over, and who's walking toward me but the general manager of the Boston Bruins, Don Sweeney,
Wow.
is in Providence scouting the game. And so he heard that I was down, and I'm in the basement, where the locker rooms are at this in this area, doing these signings. And he comes down and shakes my hand, and that's the kind of guy he is, and that's the kind of organization the Bruins are. And I say it all the time, they're just a classy organization. And
Yeah.
the fact that they would include, a guy who played 3 games, and I'm sure they do it for the guy who just played 1 game. They're like, this matters, because our hockey team, I'll say our hockey team, the Bruins, it's an important part of history. And I feel really blessed to be welcomed into that family. And man, I have this jersey hanging on my wall, and I'm
Yeah.
proud of it. And I'm in this tiny little town, and people know that I played for the Boston Bruins, and it's a cool thing. And now to be able to share my story of, like, the whole story behind it, and how that happened, and how I got there, and everything, my
Yeah.
rise there, the fall, and then just clawing my way back. That's now a part of Boston Bruins history too, because it's a part of it. And but yeah, I just want to I always want to honor the organization, and I'm just appreciative of those 3 games that I got.
You should be. And honestly, I remember something that a friend of mine told me. This is many, many years ago. He said, like once you are a Bruin fan or a Boston Bruin, you're basically family. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And
Right.
I personally have seen that, like just based on like people coming up to me and wanting to talk to me about like like content that I've created and so all about the Boston Bruins, and for the players it's obviously on a whole nother level where like I don't even care about how many games that you play for the Boston Bruins. The fact that the fans still remember you.
Yeah.
Like I still remembered you from that 2014-15 team. You were teammates with Craig Cunningham, for goodness sakes. Like, I mean,
Legend.
legend. We all, again, hardcore Bruin fans remember, like, remember names as such, like Bobby Robbins, like Craig Cunningham, and so forth. But the point is that once you're a Bruin for life. And it's been proven time and time again how true that is. Um and it's really an unbelievable it's really an unbelievable like feeling, I'm sure that you have. And I respect you being candid and honest with me about like the feeling that you have of disappointment and whatnot. But I would be remiss in telling you that, hey, like, you also should feel a immense deal of pride because, man, like, do you know just how small of the percentage of the world's population gets to say that they played a single game in the NHL, let alone three or however many for the Boston Bruins? It's a
Right.
very
And yeah,
it's
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 tiny, and
less
I
it's
know it.
it's less than 1%.
Right. And I am
You're
so
one of them.
blessed. I know that.
Yeah.
I do, I do feel that, and that's something that I'm working through is just like, and a big part of it was writing this Savage memoir, was going through all that junk, things I had been holding in, and it was almost a therapeutic process to
Mhm.
write this stuff out. Man, I went there's some of these chapters in here where like I had mental breakdowns writing these. Like I'm typing. I have this crazy electronic or yeah, like a digital typewriter, and I
Mhm.
was writing these and I'm just weeping. I'm weeping like an outpouring of emotion. So I think a lot of it I had held in, and it felt good to just to release it and finally release it. And if there is any of those feelings of like failure or shame or anything, man, that's just the enemy whispering again. And I'm like, I got my knuckles up, man. I'm blessed to be able to have
Yeah.
those 3 games. I'm blessed to have this jersey, and that's just my story. That's my story, and I got to own it. And I'm blessed to have it. So I'm keeping my knuckles up always, Shukri, and I mean every day. So, but yeah, the fact that I got to play for the spoked bee, man, is pretty
Mhm.
cool, and I don't take that lightly, and I wouldn't take it lightly even if I just played the 3 games and then, you know, just disappeared and never heard from them again. But the fact that they have welcomed me into that family and have
Yeah.
supported me and get back to me if I get to reach out to them, and um, it's a classy organization from the management and ownership all the way down to the players, and yeah, man, just super blessed.
Yeah. And you are forever a part of the Bruins family, forever and always. And outside of outside of hockey, I genuinely appreciate you. Um, I appreciate the relationship that we both have. That has continued to grow on and on outside of the pod. The pod is just a blip of a blip on the radar. And I just want to conclude the pod by saying thank you for like sharing with me and being vulnerable with me, which for a lot of men it's not easy. It's not easy being open. It's not easy, you know being like transparent in that regard. And you trusting me to be able to just truly just listen to understand and feel where you're coming from. And I want to say like that, continue the good fight. And like we obviously have each other's numbers. We text each other like here and there and whatnot. I'm just another person that I can at least I can offer some level of support, and I'm happy to do that by reading your incredible book. And I'm even more excited than I was before, um, to read it now. Like, just getting a small taste of just the impact, and as well as just your story through part one of this recording. I can't wait to record part two with you, and as well as to really like deep dive into your story and everything that you have had to fight through and overcome, and still fight through this day. And I just want to say I'm beyond proud of you. I'm proud of you because
Thank you, man.
of just the journey that you've had to go through to overcome to get to this point. And I can only imagine it obviously has not been easy. Nothing about it has been easy, but I'm proud of you, man. Like I mean that like with every fiber of my being. Like, keep your head up, man. Like, thank you
Head
for
up,
taking
knuckles up.
time.
And
Knuckles
same to
up.
you, man. Same to you, Shukri. We've been talking, and I was watching your content, and we reached out on X there on Twitter, and just started chatting. And I'd been rooting for you, and man, when I saw you a couple weeks ago on that, you made the NHL commercial for your reaction video. Man,
Uh,
that really made my day. I was like, oh man, because you're a guy who's going for it. I like people who are going for it, who have a big dream. Like, you're going for it. You're creating content. You're putting your voice and your personality into the world, and you have big dreams, and you're going for it. And then to see that happen, and you get featured on there on the NHL video was awesome, man. And I was pumped for you, and I'm rooting for you too, man. And I can't wait for the number two podcast here, the second
yeah,
round, and really deep dive into this book, because I think there's some stuff in there for you too, and for especially for men, man. There's a
yes,
part of me wanted to write it's called a savage memoir, like that. Literally the first page right here, you open it up, it has
mhm,
a warning, and it says, warning, mature content, adult themes, graphic sexuality, explicit drug use, crude language, ultra violence, exploding bodily fluids, general mayhem, and depictions of insanity that some readers may find disturbing. Like, that's all. That's real. I mean, that's a real warning, but I obviously it's
yeah,
still written stylistically to kind of
yeah,
like draw you in, but that's the real deal. So I wrote this book kind of like I wanted to blow people's freaking minds, and I just
yeah,
laid it out there in this raw, like, gut-wrenching way, poetic way. But the surprising thing is that I found that people have been very inspired by it. And I didn't want to write that hoorah, like, inspirational book. I wanted to write just a gut wrenching, savage memoir. And it seems like especially a lot of men are
mhm,
resonating with it, and young, guys our age in their 20s, 30s. I guess I'm in my 40s now. I got old, but middle-aged men are resonating with it, and feeling inspiration from it to be better, to become better men, and to live out they're on a quest, a spirit quest, finding out who they really are. And um, so that's been a big blessing and a surprise for me, because my goal was to blow people's minds and just tell the craziest story in the craziest way I could. But it's cool to know that it's been inspiring to people, and I think it shows a deep vulnerability. Myself, being a tough guy and a big guy, like, but to open up my heart and soul, and to expose my darkest stuff, man. Like, there's some sick stuff in here, because I was a sick man, and I needed healing, um, and it just captures that in a very raw way. So I'm excited for you to read it, and your listeners as well. And yeah, it's only available at bobbyrobbins.com. If I can give a plug for myself here.
yes, please do.
Yeah, Bobby, BOBBYROBINS.com. We're doing it ourselves. And if you buy my book, man, I sign it for you and personalize it. I pack it up. I tape it, man. I put some finishing touches on that thing, and I send it to you myself through my local post office. So I go there every day and chit chat with those people who are reading my book too. And they're like, "Oh man, you used to do that." I'm like, "Yeah, I did." It's the real deal, and I appreciate you supporting me. Anybody listening out there, if you want to hear a savage story, man, this is the real deal. And I'm a trained creative writing English major as well. Studied that at UMass Lowell. Studied under a famous novelist as my mentor, and I can, for some reason, man, it's a God-given skill or talent. And I say it with nothing but humility. That for whatever reason, I've been given a gift to be able to extract savage sentences that
Yeah.
are mind blowing. So hockey was just kind of the training wheels for my real talent, which is capturing these words. And I really feel like I did it in this savage memoir. So you'll have to be the judge and let me know what you think.
I cannot wait to do that. And with that being said, this is the conclusion of part one of this podcast series between myself and former Boston Bruin Bobby Robbins, the author of his memoir, Sex, Drugs, Put Up the Book,
Yep.
and, and
Sex,
like
drugs,
Drugs,
pucks, and
Pucks,
souls.
and Souls.
Secret
That's the
life of a
book
hockey
there.
fighter.
And there it is right there. Like, please give it a read. Go buy it on his website and like drop a review.
Yeah, that
I'm
would
going
help.
to, yes, and as I mentioned, part two of of this interview coming up very, very soon.
I love it. I'm ready. Ready when you are, man.